All right, welcome back. So this video, we're going to focus mainly on the lumbar and sacral plexuses, but I forgot to mention a couple of the ones that weren't directly in that other picture of the brachial plexus. I wanted to identify the pectoral nerves. These are just, we don't really have a ton of diagrammatical information. It's just these two little nubbins that kind of come off that loop of a nerve connecting the lateral cord to the medial cord. So there's not much to go on, but that is kind of helpful because that's quite unique. They're the only two little nubs right there. And those pectoral nerves, medial and lateral, go to innervate your pectoralis major and pectoralis minor. And then also listed was the thoracic nerves, but remember the thoracic nerves do not do not form a plexus. They're just kind of there in between the brachial and the lumbar, and they innervate the skin the skin of the trunk and your muscles of the trunk. So primarily your intercostal muscles. They might be also, say, like your trapezius, your latissimus dorsi, some of those other muscles of your trunk. Okay, so we can come back here. So I'm going to focus on your lumbar and sacral plexuses first in these zoomed in pictures, and then we'll see if we can identify some of them in these kind of full long leg pictures here. So the first one is the iliohypogastric here. And if we find that, it's just going to be this branch right here. So iliohypogastric. It innervates your external and internal oblique and transverse abdominis muscles. So think your abdomen area. That's the motor command. And then it receives sensory information from your inferior abdomen and buttocks. Okay. Then we have next on our list is our genitofemoral. So the name of this nerve actually gives you clues as to what it does, what its distribution is. It's mainly sensory, and it's going to be carrying sensory information from the skin over your anteromedial thigh, that's the femoral part, and the some portions of the external genitalia. So that's going to be this one right here. So that is your genitofemoral. All right, next on the list is lateral femoral cutaneous. So again, this is a cutaneous. We saw this nerve in the full body picture at the very beginning. So this innervates the skin over the anterior, lateral, and posterior thigh. So anterior, lateral, and posterior. So it's not medial. That's going to be more of the genitofemoral. So that's going to be this branch right here. So that's going to be your lateral femoral cutaneous nerve. The next is your femoral nerve. Okay, so the femoral nerve is this kind of big branch here. The femoral nerve innervates your quadriceps, so that's going to be your rectus femoris and all three of your vastus, your sartorius, pectineus, iliopsoas. So it's a big motor command center for a lot of those large thigh muscles, your anterior thigh muscles. It also brings in sensory information from the skin of the anteromedial thigh and medial surfaces of the leg and the foot. Mainly through branches of some other smaller nerves we're going to get to here on the leg picture. Okay, so that's our femoral nerve. So those are the nerves that are associated primarily with the lumbar plexus. Now we can take a look at some of the nerves that are coming off of the sacral plexus. We have the saphenous is not going to be on this picture. We'll see it more on these pictures over here in a little bit. So I'll skip over that one and do the gluteal nerves. So we have two gluteal nerves. We have superior and inferior. Superior and inferior gluteal nerves. So the superior one is right here, and the inferior one is right here. So that makes sense, right? Superior is on the top, inferior is on the bottom. So the superior gluteal nerve is primarily the motor commands to your gluteus minimus, gluteus medius, and your tensor fascial latae. So if you remember those muscles from 231. And then your inferior gluteal goes to your gluteus maximus. So between these two muscles, between these two nerves, we innervate all three gluteus muscles and your TFL, the tensor fascial latae. All right, and then we have our sciatic nerve, which is this big one, right? This is the big one right here. Big sciatic nerve runs down that greater sciatic notch, if you remember that from your bone list. Okay. So those are the ones that we can see associated at this level. So just your gluteal nerves and then your sciatic nerve. So now I'm going to take my little plastic sheet and put it over to these leg pictures so we can see some of the ones that we weren't able to see earlier. And then see some of the extensions of some of these other ones. Okay, so I'm just going to go through, since I've identified and kind of discussed the functions, I'm just going to try to identify, I'll zoom in here on the anterior view first. So this is the anterior part of the leg. So we have our iliohypogastric, which is kind of the superior nerve here. We have our genitofemoral right here. Lateral femoral cutaneous, and that's going to run all the way kind of down here. The femoral nerve is going to come down here, and then it splits. And then here's our superior and inferior gluteal nerves, and we'll see those a little bit better on the posterior view picture. Here's that sciatic nerve, and again, that's going to show up better on the posterior. Here's that saphenous. So the saphenous is a big branch that's coming off of the femoral, so we can kind of see the branching point here. So the saphenous innervates or brings in sensory information from the skin of the medial leg and foot, hip, and knee joints. So you can see it's all medial. It runs down this entire length. And if we look at our foot picture, so there's our saphenous here, is going to be the green. So wherever we see green coloring on our ankle and our foot, that's going to be sensory information that's coming in via the saphenous nerve. Okay. What else can we see on this picture? I don't think we have common, oh yes, we have common fibular nerve here. So that's new. So this is going to kind of wrap around, right around that lateral side of the knee, kind of right below the head of the tibia. Common fibular and tibial. I think we're going to see that on the posterior view. Okay, so those are all the nerves that we can see on this anterior view. So let's take a look. I don't know if I can get my camera to, there we go. About as good as we're going to get there. Okay. So here, now that we are looking at the back side, we can see those gluteal nerves a little bit better. So here's your superior gluteal, goes up and branches all on the back side of your ilium, which is really nice to see. And then the inferior, you can see, kind of goes a little bit more and branches more lateral and inferior, which is nice. Here's that sciatic nerve, right? Nice big, goes all the way down the back side of your thigh. And then this is where it splits. So this is where we were able to, we can now see the tibial nerve, which brings sensory information from the skin of the posterior surface of the leg, the sole of the foot, and it also sends some motor commands to muscles of the back of the thigh, leg, and foot. Okay, so the tibial nerve, and we can also see some of it innervation on the foot here. So it's the purple. Wherever there's purple, that's going to be your sensory information coming in on the tibial nerve. And then here's that common fibular. So we have that sciatic nerve coming down, and it branches into the tibial nerve here and the common fibular nerve here, which is going to go and wrap around, and that's where we saw it coming around on this anterior view. So you can think of it kind of starting posteriorly, like right behind your knee, and then wrapping around laterally towards the front. And so that was that common fibular nerve, which innervates or brings sensory information from the skin of the anterior and lateral surface of the leg, the dorsum of the foot, right? So here's our fibular nerve. Dorsum kind of means back of, as opposed to the sole of the foot. And it has some motor commands to branches of your biceps femoris, fibularis muscles, tibialis anterior, and extensor muscles of the toes. So again, wherever you see that common fibular or just the fibular nerve, the yellow here, that's going to be that sensory information going up towards your spinal cord. All right, so that wraps up the nerve list. So hopefully these videos are helping you, since I don't really have a ton of time to go over this in lab, that this will be helpful in your learning and review. All right, see you later.